This is News Talk 980 CKNW.
Welcome back to News Talk 980 CKNW. Now, a lot of people talking about this today. Are you really worried, though, about interest rates going higher? Well, Michael Campbell is telling us to stop really overthinking it. The Bank of Canada is not only keeping rates steady, but also has given no indication they're going to be going up anytime soon. That's the good news for borrowers, but the bad news is that the reason is that economic growth is still barely moving the needle. With more on this, plus a couple of questions on real estate, as we should be talking about it in the correct way, Michael Campbell, host of Canada's top-rated financial show, Money Talks, on the phone. Mike, welcome back.
Thanks very much, Trex.
We're going to talk about real estate in just a couple of seconds here, but no big surprise that the Bank of Canada today left rates unchanged. But what jumped out at you in today's statement? You always have the inside track on this stuff.
Well, one of the things, by the way, it's certainly related to interest rates, because I think at the entry level, at the lesser price level, the only thing that's going to derail it is going to be a rise in interest rates, and that's not forthcoming at all. And the reason is, as you mentioned, the economy has shrunk. I mean, they're going to shrink in the second quarter. Our number is going to be minus 1% according to the bank. Going to get a rise in the third and fourth quarter, but overall, the projection for 2016 is still a very dismal 1.3% growth.
I know that Fort McMurray factors in a little bit here as well. How has that affected the growth in Canada?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is the first time they talked about it in June, but now they've quantified it for us. And, Fort McMurray's economic activity is going to cost, or the problem is going to cost 1.1% drop in economic growth in the second quarter. It's going to increase it, though, as they rebuild 1.3% in the third quarter. So, I mean, it's a net positive, but it is not positive overall because, of course, we had a ton of wealth destroyed. You had individuals losing their jobs, certainly saw a decrease in income. So it's not overall a good thing, but it's just talking specifically about the economic growth impact, which is, I say, negative in the second quarter, slightly more positive in the third.
In the last few hours, we've seen the Queen swear in Mrs. May as the new British Prime Minister. She is set to announce her cabinet, and part of that cabinet is going to be a Secretary of Brexit. Now, Brexit is a huge thing that is looming. It is just about to, start getting underway. They're going to figure out details of this, but how will that Brexit affect Canada's economy?
Yeah, it was interesting. The Bank of Canada statement makes it very clear. They said it's not very much, and one of the reasons our exports aren't that strong to Great Britain, for example, I forget what's about 3% of our total exports go there, but they're saying it's 1/10 of 1% in terms of economic growth, which is my little way of saying they must have a good sense of humor, because that's the old joke, is economists prove they have a sense of humor by using a decimal point. Well, point, a tenth of 1%. But here's the big problem here with all of this, is forecasting is a tough game. We act as if they should have something more prescient than they do because there's so much uncertainty out there, and Brexit's a great example of it. But, in this statement, they're saying capital spending in the oil industry, for example, is going to bottom this year and start to rise in 2017. Well, in that way, you're just betting on global oil demand. You're betting on Iran's increase in supply. You're betting on the U.S. dollar. You're betting on domestic policies. My point is, it's not easy. And even in the statement, the bank said, hey, they're doing all of this in a climate of heightened uncertainty, and that's certainly the case.
Real estate is still a big discussion topic here. Everyone seems to have an opinion on it. Will there be a bubble? Will there not be a bubble? Now, you, and we know this about you, you have a problem with how real estate's been discussed. Explain why, because I agree with you on this.
Well, I'm not afraid to criticize. I mean, I think the media's got to hold itself to the same standards it's holding everybody else to. And here's the thing, though. We're mixing it all up. I hear talk about affordability and entry-level buyers, that kind of stuff. Literally, in the same breath, we're talking about those massive, 10 and 20 and $30 million homes. It's not the same thing. But here's the key. They're not even being driven by the same factors. At the lower end, you look at the immigration numbers, you're looking at the interest rate scenarios we alluded to earlier, but at the upper end, you're looking at capital flow coming especially out of China, I think, in specific high-priced neighborhoods. So it's not the same thing. Second thing I'd just bring up is we've got to stop saying that rising prices are a bad deal, because they're certainly not for anyone who owns a home. So it's not just one side or the other. I think we have to include them both. And here's the big one here, because, of course, it's become a political football. So we pretend like there's some sort of magic legislative wand that's going to come and be enacted with no consequences. I mean, keep in mind, in BC, really the only strong economy in the country, and a lot of that has to do with real estate. And the bottom line is one of the main factors driving real estate activity and making it prices rise at the lower to mid-level is that we got 45 to 50,000 new people are going to come to the Lower Mainland this year. Over half of that is, by the way, inter-Canada migration, about 25. We got to find homes for about 2,000 to 3,000 every month at the rate we're going. So I think that's the bottom line, is that there's all of those factors. We're just oversimplified it too much, especially when we think that governments can control everything, and they can't.
Here in BC, we know that the MLAs are going to get recalled to the legislature coming up on July 25, so the government can start hammering out some changes to the Vancouver Charter so they can put in what they're calling a vacancy tax. Now, a lot of different opinions on this. Some are saying it could open up the rental market. Some saying it could hurt the market. What do you see here?
Well, I'm smiling because I'm impressed that you could say all that without smiling, because this is just a case of governments have to be seen to doing something. So the main complaints we've been hearing is about affordability and high prices. Well, this has nothing to do with either one of them. And I understand why people would say this may do something to free up on the short term more rental units, but you got to figure out what that cost might be. It might be less construction because, again, you've restricted the use of that. We've certainly seen that when they put in rent controls, where developers just said, well, that's not worth it. I'm not going to do that. And, rent controls has not worked out the way it was supposed to, but this would be another example. The other thing that kills me, Drex, is they go, what about private property rights? I mean, it is incredible how casual we are. I mean, someone goes out and buys a condo in this case, and the government decides it can't sit empty for 6 or 8 or 12 months, whatever the details come out to be. Otherwise, you're going to pay a tax penalty. I mean, I also want to know how many new civil servants are we going to need to police that? It's just more regulation, and again, it is up in the air whether that's going to help renters or not, but it has zippo to do with the affordability crisis and high prices.
And it stinks of a double standard too, because if you're a commercial property owner, you might be sitting on a shed that you can't rent out for years on years. Yeah. I don't see anyone putting a vacancy tax on that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating because, of course, we do need the details. But what, are we going to have a whole new sort of empty, vacant condo police force? I just don't know how you're going to ever police it. Plus, we need the details on what time is it. You go out for dinner. Has your apartment been left emptied for too long? What's the time frame here? And, because we do have a lot of snowbirds. It's just we need the details, and we can go into it when we get them. But at the meantime, I'm just really surprised that no one's debating private property rights here.
All right. Michael Campbell with your midweek money report. Mike, always a pleasure.
Good stuff, Drex. Thanks.
Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. This is News Talk 980, CKNW.